Hello everyone. I like a good haunted house book. And I really love a good haunted house book when it can take the trope of the haunted house, turn it into something a little bit weird, a little bit different, and certainly frightening. I think we all can appreciate that. And that is what this book does today, and it is a good one. And as always, I want to remind you that I have books for sale. You can find those at the link in the description. And you can read my story in the anthology Ooze, Little Bursts of Body Horror, along with 20 other authors. The link for that book is also in the description as well. All right, let's get on with the video. All right, so the book we're going to be talking about today is called The Suffering by M.J. Mars. When I first read this book, I got it as an advanced review copy over on NetGalley. And I spoke to MJ over on Twitter, and I found out something I didn't know. This was her very first novel. She'd written some short stories for anthologies before, but this was her first full-length work. And I'm telling you, it is an excellent debut. And I cannot wait to see what she does in the future. Sometimes when it's an author's first novel, I don't want to say they're bad, but sometimes they can seem hesitant about what they're trying to accomplish, if you know what I mean. If you know, and if you read any authors that have maybe 3 or 4 novels, and you've read them all, if you go back to the first one, you can almost kind of see a hesitancy there, you know. Because, of course, they're trying to get published and they're trying to make something that's consumable for the masses, get that first break and first opportunity. And I am always excited when an author gets that chance. It makes me happy on the inside. But this one didn't suffer from that. When she told me this was her first one, I thought, surely that can't be right. But, well, she would know. So I just accepted that this is her first novel. And there was no hesitancy there. She knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she delivered this engaging, well-paced, terrifying novel. Now, it is a haunted house book, but it does have some twists, and the way these spirits interact with the humans is something different and unique. But let me give you a little background. There's a house known as the Suffering House. And in the present day, it is occupied by several university students. They share the rent and the food and the utilities, and they can afford to do this because it belongs to the family of one of the students, and his uncle is letting him rent the house at really a dirt cheap price. And no university student could pass something like that up. And they're friends. They're all friends. They all get along. And you're going to meet all these characters as you're reading the book. But this house also has a history. Because back in the day, back in the time when spiritualism and seances and all that stuff was beginning to gain popularity, somebody decided to hold a seance in that house, believing that there were spirits actually living inside of the walls of the place. And so they invited some people over. They got somebody to conduct the seance. And, well, it turned into a bloodbath because they learned that those spirits are actually there. They are very powerful. They are very evil. And, yeah, it turned into a massacre. Nobody leaves there alive except for the person who actually conducted the seance. And we'll find out that he is related. He is the ancestor of the family who owns the house now that one of his relatives is now living in the present day. They know about the history of the house. They do some research and find out some things. And then in the present day, one Halloween night, they're all drinking, having a good time, celebrating an accomplishment by one of them. And they decide to do this ritual exactly as his relative did all those years ago. I don't know what's up with you kids today, and your lack of knowledge of horror survival, but you should know that's just a bad idea. And they performed this seance, and yes, the spirits are still there, including a particularly very nasty one in the cellar. This creature's spirit is horrifying. Nobody will go down to the cellar. Let's put it that way. But they unleash these spirits. Now, the thing about these spirits is that these are not just generic, wispy, passing through walls, knocking objects over kind of spirits. They are mean and they are nasty. And the great thing about this book is that, think of the movie 13 Ghosts. This book has that vibe, except there's not 13 of the ghosts. There's 5, I believe. But it has that same element of ever-increasing terror as we learn about the history of these spirits. They all had a past life at some point, and even when they were living, they did some horrendous, terrible things. And that malevolence and that dread followed them over to the afterlife, where they are now stuck in the walls of this house until they are released by the seance. And pretty soon, each and every one of these students starts experiencing things that are increasingly more bizarre, increasingly more creepy, to the point where initially the spirits cannot leave this house. They are released from the walls, but they're kind of bound to the house. But eventually, they can leave when some of the students leave. And so this starts affecting them in very negative and very bloody ways, no matter whether they're at home or whether they're outside doing their hobbies and their studies and seeing their other friends and things like that. And once they figure out that they have unleashed these hellish spirits onto the world, and how it affects them each individually, it's now a race for survival, and not all of them will survive. But they have to figure out a way to get these ghosts back in the wall to take care of the situation that they created before even more terror and more bloodshed is put out into the world. And of course, when these horrible things happen, they can't say, well, the ghosts did it, because obviously nobody's going to believe them. So they are kind of stuck believing that perhaps they are changing. Perhaps these spirits are trying to possess them to do their evil bidding by possessing their physical bodies. But it's not really that. And that's the thing. I don't want to talk too much more about it, because there are aspects of this book, including a cursed spell book. One of the family members that knows a little too much. There's a secret about the man who conducted the seance originally back in, I believe it was the 1800s. The only one that survived that massacre when he tried it the first time. We're going to find out more about him and what secrets he was hiding, and how all these spirits are somehow connected to each of them, and why that is. So as I said, it's a very engaging, well-paced, oftentimes bloody book, and it just brings the scares. And that's what we want in a horror book. This book might start out innocently enough, but as you're turning the pages, you get this sense of dread that's written throughout the book, because worse things are coming, and you're just sitting there on the edge of your seat wondering, when is it going to happen? When are these things? What's going to happen, first of all, and then when is it going to happen? And by the time your mind starts to figure it out, well, it's too late. You're drawn into those scenes, and you realize just how much trouble these university students are in. because they had to do that seance that one night, and that's never a good thing. But this book is just a fun haunted house story. It has some twists and turns and secrets that are going to come out later in the book. The way these ghosts all have their separate personalities and separate wants and desires, none of them good, by the way. Especially that creature, that spirit that lives in the cellar. You're going to be scared. It's a very frightening thing to think about. And like I said, not all of them will make it, but some of them will. But you're going to have to read it to find out how, and the things they discover and what they have to go through in order to undo the evil that they've done. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought it was great, and I highly, highly recommend it to you. The Suffering by M.J. Mars. She's got big, she's going to be a big deal in the future. So jump on that right now. And I will leave a link down below to Amazon where you can purchase your copy of The Suffering. And I hope you do. And as always, I want to say thank you for taking some of your time, spending it here with me. I really appreciate you guys watching. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.